Good morning and welcome to this morning's reflection. We live in a time that feels loud with breaking news, loud with opinions and loud with urgency. The world seems to speak to us in headlines, in alerts, and very often what it says is very, very unsettling. There is war that does not end quickly. There is political division that feels less like disagreement and much more like fracture. There is economic pressure that weighs on ordinary households. There is environmental grief. A quiet sorrow, a seasoned shift in ways we do not fully recognize anymore. Many people feel tired in their bones, not just busy, but deeply, deeply weary. We carry a sense that something is not quite right, even when our own lives are functioning on the surface and seem okay. And yet, and this matters, this really and truly matters, this is not the first time humanity has stood in such a place. This is not the first time. Every generation inherits a world that feels to them close to the edge. History reminds us that uncertainty is not a sign of failure. It is the soil in which transformation often begins. Hope in times like these cannot be loud or naive. It must be honest. It must be durable. It must be able to sit beside grief without denying it. So today, I want to speak of a quieter hope. Not the hope that everything will be fine, but the hope that something faithful is still happening beneath the surface. When systems shake, what is revealed is not only what is broken, but what is essential. When noise overwhelms us, it clarifies the longing for depth. When certainty collapses, it makes room for wisdom. Across the world, even now, people are choosing courage in small ways. Parents are raising children with tenderness in an anxious age. Teachers are holding classrooms together with patience and creativity. Doctors and nurses continue to care, even when they're exhausted. Artists are still making beauty, not to escape reality, but to tell the truth about it. And perhaps most quietly of all, people are asking better questions. Not how do we win, but rather how do we live well? Not who is to blame, but rather what is being asked of us now. This is not collapse, this is transition. And transition is always uncomfortable. The old maps no longer quite work. Familiar assurances sound thin. But this does not mean that there is no direction. Only that the way forward must be walked with attentiveness rather than certainty. Hope in this moment is not a destination. It is a practice. It looks like staying present rather than numbing out. It looks like choosing relationship over righteousness. It looks like learning how to listen again to one another, to the earth, to our own interior lives. Hope is not denying what is dark. Hope is refusing to believe that darkness has the final word. There is a depth of truth that we often forget. Human beings are remarkably capable of renewal. After every period of upheaval, new forms of solidarity emerge. New language is found. New ways of belonging take shape. We are already seeing this in communities forming around shared care rather than shared ideology, in renewed interest in spirituality that is humble rather than dogmatic, in a longing for slowness, rootedness, and meaning. Something in us knows that endless consumption, endless outrage, endless speed cannot and will not sustain us. And so a turning is underway. It is uneven, it is fragile, but it is real. Hope today may simply mean this: to tend that which is near, to care for the person who is in front of you, to do your work with integrity, to rest when rest is needed, to refuse cynicism as a posture of wisdom. Cynicism pretends to be intelligent, but it is often just despair in disguise. Hope, by contrast, is brave. It requires imagination. It asks us to believe that our small acts still matter, even when we cannot see the outcome. And they do. History is shaped less by grand gestures than by countless faithful ones, by people who keep showing up, who keep choosing kindness, who keep speaking truth without cruelty. So if the world feels heavy, let that be a signal, not to harden, but to soften wisely. If you feel disorientated, let that be permission to slow down and listen more deeply. If you feel grief, let it be a measure of how deeply you love what has been threatened. The future is not yet written, and despite all appearances, it is not empty. It is being shaped quietly, daily, by what we choose today, now. We may choose attentiveness over panic, depth over distraction, and faithfulness over fear. And we may trust that even in uncertain times, life is still moving toward wholeness, often slower than we want, but more persistently than we realize. Hope is still here, learning to breathe and inviting us to breathe with it. Each and every one of us is challenged, and is challenged in particular by the parable of the Good Samaritan. The Samaritan stopped to help the man who had been beaten by robbers. He did not ask, "What will happen to me if I stop and help this man?" Rather, he asked, "What will happen to that man if I don't stop and help him?" And that's the question that gives us hope. What will happen to the world if we do not stop, if we do not stand up for our planet, for one another, for freedom and for justice? What will happen if we do not do that? And the first question for Christians is, what will happen if we do not pray? I've been alarmed at the silence of Christians worldwide. Why have we not been called to prayer? Why have we not been called to gather together in large numbers and pray? Why? And what will happen to the world if we don't? What will happen to the world if we don't become agents of love in a world filled with hate? What will happen then? Let us reflect on that today. Amen.